Hello students, I'm going to read Did I Ever Tell You How Lucky You Are? It's going to be read by Mrs. Bellamy. When I was quite young and quite small for my size, I met an old man in the desert of dries, and he sang me a song I will never forget. At least, well, I haven't forgotten it yet. He sat in a terribly prickly place, but he sang with a sunny, sweet smile on his face. When you think things are bad, when you feel sour and blue, when you start to get mad, you should do what I do. Just tell yourself, Ducky, you're really quite lucky. Some people are much more, oh, ever so much more, oh, muchly, much, much more unlucky than you. Be glad you don't work on a bunglebug bridge that they're building across Boober Bay at Bum Bridge. It's a troublesome world. All the people who are in it are troubled with troubles almost every minute. You ought to be thankful a whole heaping lot for the places and people you're lucky you're not. Just suppose, for example, you lived in Gazette and got caught in that traffic on Zate Highway 8. Or suppose, just for an instance, you lived in Gazer with your bedroom up here and your bathroom up there. Suppose, just suppose, you were poor Herbie Hart, who was taking his thromdembulator apart. He never will get it together, I'm sure. He never will know if the gick or the gore fits into the scrux or the snucks or the snore. Yes, Ducky, you're lucky you're not Herbie Hart, who has taken his thromdembulator apart. Think they work you too hard? Think of poor Ali Sard. He has to mow grass in his uncle's backyard, and it's quick growing grass, and it grows as he mows it. The faster he mows it, the faster he grows it. And all that his stingy old uncle will pay for his shoving that mower around in that hay is a piffless pay of 2 ducats a day. And Ali can't live on such piffless pay. So he has to paint flagpoles on Sundays in grooves. How lucky you are you don't live in his shoes. And while we're at it, consider the schlots, the crumple-horned, web-foot, green-bearded schlots, whose tail is entailed with unsolvable knots. If he isn't much worse off than you, I'll eat my umbrella. That's just what I'll do. And you're lucky indeed you don't ride on a camel. To ride on a camel, you sit on a whammel. A whammel, you know, is sort of a saddle held on by a button that's known as a faddle. And boy, if your old waffle faddle gets loose, I'm telling you, Ducky, you're gone like a goose. And poor Mr. Potter, T-crosser, I-dotter, he has to cross T's and he has to dot I's in an I and T factory out in Van Nuys. Oh, the jobs people work at. Out west near Hotch Hotch, there's a Hotch Hotcher bee watcher. His job is to keep both eyes on the lazy town bee. A bee that is watched will work harder, you see. Well, he watched and he watched, but in spite of his watch, that bee didn't work any harder, not much. So then somebody said our old bee watching man just isn't bee watching as hard as he can. He ought to be watched by another Hotch Hotcher. The thing that we need is a bee watcher. Well, the bee watcher watched the bee watcher. He didn't watch well, so another Hotch Hotter had to come in as a watcher. And today, all the Hotchers who live in Hotch Hotch are watching on watching the watcher who's watching that bee. You're not Hotch Watcher. You're lucky, you see. And how fortunate you're not Professor DeBreeze, who has spent the past 32 years, if you please, trying to teach Irish ducks how to read Javanese. And think of the poor puffling pogle horn players who have to parade down the Poogle horn stairs every morning to wake up the Prince of Pooh broken. It's awful how often their poogles get broken. And oh, just suppose you were poor Harry Haddle. Try as he will, he can't make any shadow. He thinks that perhaps something's wrong with his giz, and I think that by golly, there probably is. And the brothers Bazoo, the poor brothers Bazoo, suppose your hair grew like there's happened to do. You think you're unlucky. I'm telling you, Ducky, some people are muchly, oh, ever so muchly, more unlucky than you. And suppose that you lived in the forest in France, where the average young person just hasn't a chance to escape from the perilous pants-eating plants. But your pants are safe, you're a fortunate guy, and you ought to be shouting, "How lucky am I?" And speaking of plants, you should be greatly gladdish. You're not Farmer Falkenberg, 17th radish. It's teeny tiny. And you're so lucky you're not Gucky Gown, who lives by himself 90 miles out of town in the ruins of Ronk. Ronk is rather run down. And you're so lucky you're not a left sock left behind by mistake in the caverns of Croc. Thank goodness for all the things you are not. Thank goodness you're not something someone forgot and left all alone in some punkerish place like a rusty tin coat hanger hanging in space. That's why I say, Ducky, don't grumble, don't stew. Some critters are much, oh, ever so much, so muchly, much more unlucky than you. Did I ever tell you how lucky you are? Read by Mrs. Bellamy. And you can get this book at Celebrations of Learning.